What's the most important part of the cinematographer's job?
I think the most important part for a cinematographer is his relationship with the director. And basically, as a cinematographer, you are there to facilitate the director's dream. So, I think it's very important to have a point of view that you bring to it. In other words, you've read the script, you see the movie in a certain way. One of the first things I like to do with a director that I'm about to work with is to get in a screening room and watch some of the movies that we think are like relevant to the one that we're doing, or his favorite movies. And I bring the same thing to the party, so that we watch other movies and we come to a symbiosis of the way we're going to treat the material. Because very often on the set, everything's moving so fast that you can't have that kind of artistic collaboration. Because the actors are out there and you got to light it, and you got someone screaming at you. You've been lighting that for 7.5 minutes. Come on, we gotta go. So in the heat of battle, you can't necessarily have the kind of collaboration that you would like, but you need to have set that up ahead of time, and that is your job, is to bring a visual flair to the story, but at the same time you're there to facilitate the director's vision.
Speaking of battle, we hear sometimes that a cinematographer and a director will clash, and that the cinematographer will say, I need this isn't going to work. Both have a different agenda. What advice would you recommend to new directors if they're in that spot, and how do they take it away from the set? I realize at times it's going to be chaos, you're not going to be able to fight it, and you probably don't want to do it in front of a crew. But if faced with that dilemma, which we've definitely heard from a lot of people, or just a clashing, how do you take that away from the set and just try to make it through the entire production?
Well, there was a reason that you were chosen in the first place. So there must be, unless you're a new director and the studio said, hey, we're going to put this old-time cinematographer on your show, and he's going to make sure that you finished it in 21 days, So there is that, and that's very hard for a young director to work with. But, let's assume that's not happening, and, a director's chosen you, and you're working on his project, and something does blow up. That's exactly what you do, is you just take them on and say, hey, let's take this outside, and you have whatever that discussion is going to be away from the set, because, public airing of grievances has no place on a set for me.
Sure. And last question in the same vein, someone left a comment which I thought was interesting, and they said, if you are either a DP or a director, make sure you have some people in your own camp on set with you, so that the production doesn't run away to somebody else's side and everybody kind of turns. So do you have a core set of people you always like to work with? Not just for that possible problem, but it was something I had never thought of, never having been in that situation. But they said to always have some people, quote, in your own camp, because things could quickly turn, and then somehow the production gets away from one of the two.
Well, I'd say earlier in my career, I lost jobs because I didn't have that core crew. And, the producer wanted to hire somebody that had his gaffer and, everybody in place, and they were a well-oiled machine that could come to work on his picture, Working for years and years as a commercial director cameraman, I had a different kind of, most commercial directors, they're with a company, and every time they go out, they use exactly the same people. I had a slightly different business model in that I was a freelance director. So I would go out to like regional advertising, and I'd go to a new city and I'd have to put a whole production together from scratch. And in that situation, I used to maybe only be able to take like one guy with me. And, but I didn't always get that one guy, but I think it is really important, you know. And I actually used to take my key grip, which people thought was unusual. People always think, oh, he's going to take his gaffer, you know, or this, because, and I renamed him from key grip to crew chief, which is a motor racing term. And it's really the guy that runs the whole physical operation. And he used to work for me in that area, and that would let me deal with the agency and the actors and the cinema. So I think crew members are very, very important, that you have that shorthand with that person, that you can get things done very quickly, you know. And time is the enemy, you know. So.
Is it almost like being in war?
Well, I think it's much more pleasant, you know. I would imagine. But it is, you know, there's a lot of money at stake. And, you know, showing up is the first rule. So being on time on a set is my number one rule. And I probably got that from being so arrogant about it when I was a kid, you know. But because, you know, from the moment you arrive on a set, the clock is ticking, and I hear the dollar bills dropping, you know.
Sure.
And so I think it's a strategy that in other words, you have to have a battle plan to go into your day's shoot. And you have to have everything worked out to the nth degree. In other words, when I do a schedule, it's, you know, it's every 10 minutes. So 10 minutes in, I'm doing this, 10 minutes, you know. So, because I often get to other people's sets and people are like, they're in the makeup trailer and they're having their cup of coffee and, you know, and nothing's happening, you know. So for me, the very first thing that you do is you get the actors out on the set and you block the first scene. They're not, I don't care if they're in makeup or what, but the moment they arrive on the set, we block the first scene. So it's very important to have that battle plan to work with, but then you've got to be prepared to completely throw that away if either creativity or necessity takes you off in another direction. So you've always got to have a plan B, and you've always got to be able to punt if things go in a different direction. So be totally prepared, and then be prepared to give it all up, you know.